Black teen CEO denied boarding. Airline CEO called after the truth stunned staff. The gate agent glanced at the boarding pass, then back at the teenager standing before him. His eyes narrowed slightly as he took in the young black man's casual attire, designer sneakers, neat jeans, and a simple black hoodie with a subtle logo. "I'm sorry, but there seems to be a problem with your ticket," the agent said, his voice carrying just enough authority to draw the attention of nearby passengers. "This is a first-class boarding pass." 17-year-old Jamal Washington maintained his composure, though his heart rate quickened. "Yes, I'm aware. I'm the CEO of EdTech Innovators. I'm flying to San Francisco for an important presentation tomorrow morning." The agent's eyebrows rose slightly. He looked back at the boarding pass, then at his computer screen. "Sir, this is a business-class ticket purchased by a corporate account. I'll need to verify your identity and authorization to use this ticket." Jamal reached into his pocket and pulled out his company ID card and driver's license. "Here's my identification. The reservation was made by my executive assistant. You can call our company if you need verification." The agent examined the ID card with obvious skepticism. "EdTech Innovators, and you're claiming to be the chief executive officer." A white businessman in line behind Jamal shifted impatiently. "Is there a problem here? The flight is boarding." The gate agent ignored him, focusing on Jamal. "I'm going to need you to step aside while we sort this out. This ticket was purchased with corporate funds, and we need to ensure you're authorized to use it." "But I am authorized. I'm the CEO," Jamal repeated, his voice still calm but firmer now. "You can verify my identity. Look me up online if you need to." "Young man, please step aside so other passengers can board. My supervisor will be with you shortly." The agent's tone had hardened, and he gestured for Jamal to move away from the boarding gate. As Jamal reluctantly stepped to the side, he watched as the businessman behind him was processed without question and allowed to board. Several other passengers moved through, some casting curious glances his way. A few had their phones out, capturing the interaction. Jamal felt a familiar sinking feeling in his stomach, the same sensation he'd experienced countless times before when his achievements, his position, his very identity were questioned simply because of how he looked and how old he was. He pulled out his phone, knowing he had less than 20 minutes before the doors would close on the flight that would take him to the most important business meeting of his young career. A meeting that could change everything for his company and the thousands of underprivileged students they served. What nobody at this boarding gate realized was that Jamal Washington wasn't just any teenage CEO. His educational technology platform was revolutionizing access to quality education in underserved communities across the country. And tomorrow's meeting wasn't just any meeting. It was with potential investors who could help him expand his services nationwide. As Jamal dialed his executive assistant, he wondered how many more barriers he would have to break through before people stopped seeing just his age and his skin color and started recognizing him for who he truly was. Little did he know that this moment of discrimination at an airport gate was about to spark a chain of events that would test his character, challenge an entire corporate culture, and ultimately create an opportunity for profound change that would extend far beyond one missed flight. The path that led Jamal Washington to that fateful moment at the Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport had been anything but conventional. Growing up in Southside Chicago with his mother Denise, a dedicated high school English teacher, and his father Marcus, an electrical engineer, Jamal had always been surrounded by both education and technology. Their modest three-bedroom home had been filled with books, second-hand computers, and constant conversation about ideas. While they weren't wealthy, Jamal's parents had invested everything they could in nurturing their son's insatiable curiosity and natural aptitude for problem-solving. "Remember what Grandma used to say," his mother would tell him. "Knowledge is the one thing they can never take away from you." By age 12, Jamal was already building websites for local businesses. At 14, he'd created his first educational app to help his mother's students prepare for standardized tests. What started as a tool for one classroom quickly spread throughout his mother's school, then to other schools in the district. The real breakthrough came during his sophomore year of high school when he witnessed a friend struggling to keep up with advanced classes after transferring from an underfunded school. Jamal recognized a systemic problem: the vast disparity in educational resources available to students depending on their zip code. "I don't understand why some kids get world-class education while others in the same city can barely get basic resources," he'd told his parents over dinner one night. It's like the system is designed to keep some people down. His father had nodded solemnly. That's why your idea matters, son. You're building a bridge over that gap. With his parents' support and guidance from a few key mentors, Jamal had refined his educational platform to provide personalized learning experiences for students regardless of their school's funding or resources. The platform adapted to individual learning styles, provided supplemental lessons for struggling students, and offered advanced content for those who were ready to move ahead. EdTech Innovators was officially founded when Jamal was 16, operating out of his parents' basement. A small grant from a local tech incubator allowed him to hire 2 part-time programmers. 6 months later, they secured their first round of seed funding from an angel investor who had grown up in similar circumstances to Jamal and recognized the potential impact of his vision. Now at 17, Jamal was the CEO of a company with 15 employees, a functional office space in downtown Chicago, and a platform being used by over 50 schools across Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan. The pending meeting in San Francisco was with Elevation Capital, a venture capital firm known for its commitment to funding technology that addressed social inequities. Their investment would allow EdTech Innovators to expand nationwide. As Jamal stood by the boarding gate, watching passengers file onto the plane without him, he thought about all the obstacles he'd already overcome. The dismissive teachers who hadn't taken his ideas seriously. The skeptical school administrators who couldn't believe a teenager had created the platform. The investors who'd questioned whether someone so young could run a company. "Mr. Richards is on his way," announced the gate agent, referring to his supervisor. "Please continue to wait here." Jamal nodded, then returned to his phone call with his executive assistant, Maya Chen, a recent MBA graduate who had taken a chance on joining his startup instead of pursuing offers from established tech giants. "They're not letting me board, Maya," he explained quietly. "They don't believe I'm authorized to use the company account for the ticket." "That's ridiculous," Maya responded. "I booked it myself through our corporate travel portal. Let me speak to them." "They're bringing a supervisor." "If this doesn't get resolved quickly, I'll miss the flight. Can you look into alternatives? I absolutely cannot miss tomorrow's meeting." As they spoke, Jamal noticed a middle-aged black woman watching the situation from several seats away. She approached slowly, her eyes moving between Jamal and the gate agent who was now speaking with his supervisor in hushed tones. "Excuse me, young man," she said. "I couldn't help overhearing. Are they giving you trouble about your ticket?" Jamal nodded, covering the microphone on his phone. "Yes, ma'am, they don't believe I'm the CEO of my company and authorized to use the corporate account." The woman shook her head, her expression a mixture of frustration and resignation that spoke volumes. "Some things never change, do they? I'm Dr. Patricia Williams, head of cardiology at Grady Memorial. I deal with this kind of thing more often than I'd like to admit." She handed him a business card. "Would it help if I spoke with them?" Before Jamal could respond, a man in his 40s wearing a shirt with the airline's logo approached. "I'm Thomas Richards, the gate supervisor. What seems to be the problem here?" The gate agent quickly explained the situation from his perspective. "This young man is attempting to board with a business class ticket purchased on a corporate account. He claims to be the CEO of the company, but—" He trailed off, the implication clear in his tone. Jamal ended his call and straightened his posture. "I am Jamal Washington, CEO of EdTech Innovators. The ticket was purchased through our corporate account because I am traveling for business. I've provided my identification, and you're welcome to verify my position." Mr. Richards studied Jamal's ID with the same skepticism as the gate agent had. "How old are you, Mr. Washington?" "I'm 17, but the age of majority for business contracts in Illinois is 16. My company is properly registered, and I am legally its chief executive officer. This is discrimination based on my age and quite possibly my race." At the mention of discrimination, Mr. Richards' expression hardened. "That's a serious accusation, young man. We're simply following protocol for corporate account verification." Dr. Williams stepped forward. "I've been observing this situation, and I must say your protocol seems selectively applied. I didn't see you questioning the older white gentleman who boarded with business class tickets." The confrontation was now drawing significant attention. Several passengers had paused to watch, and more than a few had their phones out, recording. Mr. Richards lowered his voice. "Please, let's not escalate this situation. We're simply trying to prevent corporate account fraud, which is a common issue." "Then call our corporate office," Jamal insisted, checking his watch. "The flight leaves in 15 minutes. This can be resolved with one phone call. Mr. Richards hesitated, then nodded to the gate agent. Get the corporate number from the reservation details and verify his authorization. As the gate agent made the call, Jamal felt his phone vibrate with a text message from Maya. Alternative flights all booked. If you miss this one, earliest arrival would be tomorrow afternoon, after the meeting. The gate agent was speaking in a low voice on the phone, his expression gradually shifting from certainty to confusion. He covered the mouthpiece and turned to Mr. Richards. Their office confirms he's authorized, but I still need to verify he's really their CEO. They're transferring me to someone who can confirm. Jamal could feel the minutes ticking away. Each passing moment brought him closer to missing the flight and potentially losing the investment opportunity that could transform thousands of students' lives. Dr. Williams placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Stay calm, young man. Don't let them see you sweat. We're going to get this resolved. Jamal nodded gratefully, taking a deep breath. He'd faced obstacles before. This was just one more barrier to break through. What he couldn't have known was that someone in line had already posted a video of the confrontation online with the caption, Black teenage CEO denied boarding at ATL. Airline demands proof, while white passengers board unquestioned. Traveling while black, the digital spark that would eventually reach the highest levels of the airline's corporate structure had been ignited. While Jamal was fighting his battle at the boarding gate, Elizabeth Morgan, the 51-year-old CEO of Transcontinental Airways, was concluding a board meeting in the company's corporate headquarters in Dallas, Texas. As the first female chief executive in the company's history, she had spent the last 3 years working to transform the airline's culture and reputation. Our customer satisfaction scores have improved for the third consecutive quarter, she informed the board members as they gathered their materials. The investments in staff training and our new digital experience initiatives are showing promising results. Harold Winters, the longest-serving board member, nodded with approval. The numbers speak for themselves, Elizabeth. You've navigated us through the post-pandemic recovery better than most of our competitors. As the meeting dispersed, Elizabeth's chief of staff, Robert Kim, approached with an unusual expression of concern. Elizabeth, there's a situation developing that you should be aware of, he said quietly, showing her his tablet. This video is going viral on social media. It was posted 15 minutes ago and already has over 10,000 shares. Elizabeth watched the video of a young black man being questioned at what appeared to be one of their gates. The caption claimed racial discrimination. Where is this happening? She asked, her brow furrowing. Atlanta, at one of our gates for the San Francisco flight departing in, he checked his watch. About 5 minutes now. Our social media team flagged it because it's gaining traction quickly. Several civil rights activists and influencers have already reshared it. Elizabeth's mind raced through the potential implications. In her 3 years as CEO, she had made diversity and inclusion a cornerstone of her leadership strategy. She had personally championed anti-bias training for all customer-facing staff and had been outspoken about the airline industry's need to confront its history of discriminatory practices. What do we know about this young man? She asked. Not much yet. According to the Post, he claims to be the CEO of a tech company and was questioned about using a corporate account for his ticket. Our team is gathering details from the gate staff now. Elizabeth made a quick decision. I want to speak directly with the supervisor on site and find out everything you can about this young man and his company. If there's been a mistake, I want to get ahead of it immediately. As Robert hurried to make the connection, Elizabeth reflected on her own journey. As one of the few women in airline executive leadership, she was no stranger to being underestimated and having her authority questioned. Though different in nature, she recognized the fundamental injustice of having one's credentials doubted based on appearance. Within minutes, Robert returned. I have Thomas Richards, the gate supervisor in Atlanta, on the line, and we've confirmed that the young man is indeed Jamal Washington, the founder and CEO of EdTech Innovators, an educational technology company based in Chicago. He appears to be legitimate, Elizabeth. Elizabeth took the phone. Mr. Richards, this is Elizabeth Morgan. I understand there's a situation with a passenger named Jamal Washington. Has it been resolved? The supervisor's voice betrayed his surprise at hearing directly from the CEO. Ms. Morgan, we're following protocol for corporate account verification. The passenger is very young and has his identity been confirmed? Elizabeth interrupted. Yes, and has his authorization to use the corporate account been verified? Yes, we just received confirmation, but given his age and the value of the ticket, we were being cautious. Mr. Richards, Elizabeth's voice was calm but carried unmistakable authority. Is Mr. Washington still at the gate? Yes, ma'am. Has the flight departed? Not yet. They're completing the boarding process now. Allow Mr. Washington to board immediately. Then I want you to call me back from a private location. We need to discuss this further. After ending the call, Elizabeth turned to Robert. The situation isn't contained. That video is out there and it paints us in a very troubling light. We need to address this directly and transparently. Robert nodded. Should I have PR prepare a statement? Yes, but I want to do more than issue a statement. Find out if Mr. Washington has a layover or is staying in San Francisco. I want to speak with him personally. As they discussed next steps, Elizabeth's phone buzzed with a text message from her teenage daughter. Mom, is this your airline? Everyone at school is talking about it. Attached was the same video, now being shared in her daughter's social circles. The situation was escalating faster than anticipated. What had begun as a routine boarding verification had metamorphosed into a potential public relations crisis that touched on some of the most sensitive issues in American society: race, age discrimination, and corporate accountability. Elizabeth knew that how she handled the next few hours would not only impact her company's reputation, but could also set a precedent for how similar incidents were addressed across the industry. More importantly, there was a young man whose dignity and professional standing had been challenged, and that required a human response, not just a corporate one. Robert, she said decisively, cancel my meetings for tomorrow. I'm going to San Francisco. Back at the gate in Atlanta, the supervisor's demeanor had changed dramatically after his phone conversation. Mr. Washington, you're cleared to board, he announced, handing back Jamal's documents. We apologize for the delay. Please proceed to the gate immediately. They're holding the door for you. Jamal was momentarily stunned by the sudden reversal. What changed in the last 30 seconds? The supervisor avoided eye contact. The verification came through. Again, we apologize for any inconvenience. Dr. Williams, who had remained by Jamal's side throughout the ordeal, shook her head knowingly. Someone important just got involved. That's what changed. Jamal gathered his belongings, still processing what had happened. Thank you for your support, Dr. Williams. You go change the world, young man, she replied with a warm smile. And remember, document everything about this incident when you have a chance. This shouldn't happen to anyone else. As Jamal hurried down the jet bridge, he could feel dozens of eyes on him. Word of the confrontation had spread throughout the waiting area, and passengers who had already boarded had been told the flight was being held for one final passenger. He found his seat in business class, 15A, a window seat, and quickly stowed his carry-on bag. The businessman who had been behind him in line was seated across the aisle and gave him a curious look but said nothing. A flight attendant approached immediately. Mr. Washington, the captain asked me to personally apologize for the delay at the gate. Is there anything I can get for you before we depart? The sudden shift from suspicion to special attention was jarring. Just water, please, Jamal replied, buckling his seatbelt. As the plane pushed back from the gate, Jamal's phone lit up with notifications. The video of his confrontation was spreading rapidly across social media platforms. Maya had sent multiple messages. Are you on the flight? Video of the incident is going viral. CNN just reached out for comment. Call me when you land. Jamal switched his phone to airplane mode, leaned back in his seat, and closed his eyes. He needed time to process what had happened and prepare for what was coming next. The incident at the gate wasn't just about him. It represented a pattern experienced by countless others who didn't have the benefit of corporate confirmation or viral videos to validate their identity and dignity. As the plane climbed into the darkening sky, Jamal made a decision. This incident would not be buried with a perfunctory apology or swept away with an upgrade or free miles. There was an opportunity here, painful as its origins were, to create meaningful change. Meanwhile, several rows behind him, a passenger who had witnessed the entire confrontation was composing an email to her friend who worked as a journalist at the San Francisco Chronicle. The subject line read, "Major story, teen black CEO profiled at airport. I witnessed everything." By the time Jamal's plane would touch down in San Francisco, the incident would no longer belong just to him. It would belong to the public discourse, with all the complexities and opportunities that entailed. The flight from Atlanta to San Francisco typically took about 5 hours and 20 minutes time that Jamal had planned to use for finalizing his presentation to Elevation Capital. Instead, he found himself mentally replaying the confrontation at the gate, analyzing each interaction, each expression, each subtle and not-so-subtle indication that he didn't belong in business class, that he couldn't possibly be who he claimed to be. After the initial drink service, the businessman across the aisle leaned over. "Excuse me," he said. "I was behind you at the gate. That was completely unacceptable how they treated you." Jamal studied him for a moment. White, mid-40s, expensive watch, wedding ring, confident posture that spoke of privilege and ease in navigating the world. "Thank you for saying that," Jamal replied carefully. "I'm Stephen Harrington, by the way, mergers and acquisitions for Goldman Sachs." He extended his hand. "Jamal Washington, CEO of EdTech Innovators." They shook hands. "I've heard of your company," Stephen said, surprising Jamal. "My wife sits on the board of an education foundation in New York. Your adaptive learning platform has come up in their discussions about potential partnerships." The conversation opened a door that Jamal hadn't expected. For the next hour, they discussed educational technology, the challenges of scaling a startup, and the inequities in the educational system that had inspired Jamal's company in the first place. "You know," Stephen said eventually, "what happened back at the gate, that's the kind of thing my black colleagues have tried to explain to me for years. I've always acknowledged it intellectually, but seeing it happen in real time was eye-opening." Jamal nodded. "It happens so often that sometimes we just factor it into our planning. My dad always tells me to arrive earlier, dress a certain way, have extra documentation. It's exhausting." "I can imagine," Stephen said, though they both knew he couldn't, not really. "For what it's worth, I should have spoken up more forcefully at the gate. I said something, but not enough." "Most people don't say anything at all," Jamal acknowledged. As their conversation continued, Jamal's phone buzzed with a text from Maya that had come through on the plane's Wi-Fi. "Airline CEO Elizabeth Morgan trying to reach you. Wants to meet in SF. This is getting big, Jamal." Stephen noticed Jamal's expression change as he read the message. "Everything okay?" Jamal showed him the text. "Apparently the CEO of the airline wants to meet with me." Stephen's eyebrows rose. "Elizabeth Morgan, she's the real deal. First female CEO in the company's history, and she's been pushing hard for culture change. My firm has done some work with them." He paused. "This could be an important opportunity, Jamal, not just for an apology, but for actual systemic change." "That's exactly what I was thinking," Jamal agreed. "But I need to be careful about how I approach this. I don't want it to overshadow my company's mission or the meeting with Elevation Capital tomorrow." Stephen nodded thoughtfully. "You know, our San Francisco office is just a few blocks from where you're likely meeting with Elevation. I'd be happy to introduce you to our team that focuses on educational investments. Might be useful to have another perspective before your pitch." Jamal considered the networking was critical in the business world, and connections at Goldman Sachs could open doors that would otherwise remain closed to a 17-year-old CEO from Chicago. "I appreciate that, thank you," Jamal said. "I might take you up on it if I can make the timing work." As the flight continued, Jamal finally managed to focus on his presentation for Elevation Capital. The investment was crucial for EdTech Innovators' expansion plans. They needed to increase server capacity, hire more developers, and build out their curriculum development team. Most importantly, they needed to make the platform accessible to more schools in low-income districts, the very communities that stood to benefit most from the technology. 3 hours into the flight, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Wilson speaking. We're experiencing some turbulence as we cross over the Rockies. I've turned on the fasten seatbelt sign, and the flight attendants will be suspending service temporarily. We expect to be through this patch in about 20 minutes. The plane began to bounce and sway, causing several passengers to gasp. Jamal gripped his armrests, never having been particularly comfortable with turbulence. Stephen, noticing his discomfort, tried to distract him. "So tell me more about tomorrow's meeting. Elevation Capital has a strong reputation for social impact investing." Grateful for the conversation, Jamal outlined his pitch. "We're seeking a Series A round of $5 million. That would allow us to expand from 3 states to potentially nationwide within 2 years. Our platform has already shown measurable improvements in test scores and student engagement in schools where it's been implemented." "What about monetization? That's always the question with educational technology," Stephen asked. "We operate on a tiered subscription model. Schools in high-income districts pay full price, which subsidizes discounted rates for schools in middle-income areas. Low-income schools can access the platform for free, funded through our foundation partnerships and corporate sponsorships." Stephen nodded approvingly. "Smart approach, sustainable and aligned with your mission." The conversation carried them through the turbulence, and soon the seatbelt sign was turned off. As the flight attendants resumed their service, Jamal returned to his presentation, feeling more confident about tomorrow's meeting despite the day's unexpected complications. What he didn't know was that in San Francisco, Elizabeth Morgan had already landed on a corporate jet and was preparing for their meeting. She had spent the flight researching EdTech innovators, watching interviews with Jamal, and developing a strategy that she hoped would transform a potentially damaging incident into an opportunity for genuine corporate reflection and change. At the same time, the video of Jamal's confrontation at the Atlanta airport had surpassed 1 million views across various platforms. Major news outlets were picking up the story, and CEO while Black was trending nationally. The story was expanding beyond Jamal's control, taking on dimensions that reflected America's ongoing struggle with racial bias, the skepticism faced by young entrepreneurs, and the accountability of major corporations in addressing systemic discrimination. As the plane began its descent into San Francisco International Airport, Jamal looked out at the twinkling lights of the city below, unaware that he was flying into a media storm that would test his leadership, his composure, and his commitment to turning personal adversity into collective advancement. The revelation came unexpectedly, while Jamal was checking into the Fairmont Hotel in downtown San Francisco. After presenting his ID and credit card to the front desk clerk, his phone buzzed with a notification from Twitter. Someone had tagged him in a post that was rapidly gaining traction. Wait, is that Jamal Washington, the teen CEO who's supposed to be pitching a partnership to Transcontinental Airways tomorrow? The same airline that profiled him today? This just got a whole new level of awkward. CEO while Black, Jamal froze, his mind racing to process this information. He'd been so focused on his meeting with Elevation Capital that he hadn't even considered why he was flying transcontinental specifically. Maya had arranged the travel details, and he'd simply followed the itinerary. "Is everything all right, Mr. Washington?" the front desk clerk asked, noticing his distracted expression. "Yes, sorry," Jamal replied, accepting his room key. "Just received some unexpected news." In the elevator up to his room, he called Maya. "I just saw it too," she said before he could even ask. "I was going to tell you after your flight landed. The meeting tomorrow afternoon, after Elevation Capital, it's with Transcontinental's innovation team. They're interested in implementing our adaptive learning platform for their in-flight educational content and employee training programs." "Why didn't I know about this connection?" Jamal asked, entering his hotel room and setting down his bag. It wasn't finalized until last week, and honestly, it wasn't a huge deal compared to the Elevation Capital meeting. It's a potential partnership, but early stages. Their innovation director reached out after seeing your presentation at the EdTech Summit last month. Jamal sat on the edge of the bed, taking it all in. "And now the CEO of the airline wants to meet with me about what happened today." "Exactly. This has evolved beyond a simple incident, Jamal. It's now a complex business situation with major PR implications for both companies." A text message from an unknown number appeared on his phone. "Mr. Washington, this is Elizabeth Morgan, CEO of Transcontinental Airways. I'd like to meet with you this evening if possible. Please let me know if you're available. We have much to discuss." "She wants to meet tonight," Jamal told Maya. "This is moving fast," Maya replied. "How do you want to handle it?" Jamal took a deep breath, centering himself. Despite his age, moments like these were why he was the CEO. "Set up the meeting, but somewhere public, the hotel lobby or restaurant, and I want you on the call during the meeting. Put your dinner plans on hold." "Already done. What about the Elevation Capital prep? We were supposed to go through the final pitch deck tonight." "We'll have to compress it. This meeting with Morgan takes priority now." It's not just about what happened at the gate anymore. It's about how we navigate a potential business relationship that's been complicated by discrimination from their staff. After ending the call with Maya, Jamal took a moment to gather his thoughts. He opened his laptop and searched for information about Elizabeth Morgan. The results painted a picture of a trailblazer in her own right, the first female CEO of Transcontinental Airways, known for her efforts to modernize the airline's culture and operations. Several articles mentioned her initiatives around diversity and inclusion. His phone buzzed again with another text from Elizabeth Morgan. "I've reserved a private dining room at the Fairmont's restaurant for 8:30 p.m. I'm coming alone and understand if you wish to bring a colleague." Jamal replied, "I'll meet you there. My executive assistant will join by phone." With that confirmed, Jamal opened Twitter to see how the story was evolving. The hashtag #CEO while black was now among the top trending topics nationally, with thousands of black professionals sharing similar experiences of having their credentials or positions questioned. One tweet in particular caught his attention. As a 45-year-old black executive, I still get asked if I'm in the right place in first class. If it happens to me, imagine what Jamal Washington faces as a teenage CEO. Age plus race equals double discrimination. #CEO while black. The incident was clearly resonating with a broader audience, reflecting patterns of experience that extended far beyond one airport gate. What had felt personal hours ago now seemed to be taking on a life of its own as a cultural touchpoint. Jamal searched for his own name and found dozens of news articles already published, most using variations of "Black Teen CEO Denied Boarding" in their headlines. Several civil rights organizations had issued statements, and at least 2 prominent airlines had taken the opportunity to reaffirm their commitment to unbiased customer service. The business implications were becoming clearer too. EdTech Innovator's website traffic had increased by 750% in the past 6 hours, according to the analytics dashboard Maya had set up. Their social media accounts were gaining thousands of new followers by the hour. This unexpected attention created both opportunity and risk. On one hand, the increased visibility could help their mission reach a wider audience. On the other hand, Jamal didn't want his company to be defined by this incident rather than by the quality of their educational platform and the students they served. At 8:25 p.m., Jamal made his way to the hotel restaurant, dressed in a navy blazer over a white button-down shirt and khaki pants, professional but age-appropriate, a balance he was constantly navigating. He had prepared talking points, reviewed potential questions Elizabeth Morgan might ask, and set clear boundaries for what he was and wasn't willing to discuss. As he approached the private dining room, he reminded himself that despite the power dynamics at play, he was 17, meeting with the CEO of a major corporation who was more than 3 times his age. He was also a CEO in his own right. He had earned his position through innovation, hard work, and a vision that was already improving thousands of students' lives. He texted Maya, "Going in now, ready for the call in 2 minutes." Then, squaring his shoulders, Jamal knocked on the door of the private dining room, prepared to transform a moment of discrimination into an opportunity for meaningful change. Elizabeth Morgan stood as Jamal entered the private dining room. She was taller than he had expected, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail and sharp blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Mr. Washington," she said, extending her hand, "thank you for agreeing to meet on such short notice." "Ms. Morgan," Jamal replied, his handshake firm and confident as his father had taught him. "I understand we have a lot to discuss." The room was intimate but not cramped, with a small table elegantly set for 2. A bottle of sparkling water was already open, alongside a selection of appetizers. "Please have a seat," Elizabeth gestured. "I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of ordering a few items to start. I assumed you haven't had much chance to eat today." Jamal nodded, taking a seat across from her. "Before we begin, I'd like my executive assistant to join us by phone for this conversation, for documentation purposes." If Elizabeth was surprised by this professional boundary setting from someone so young, she didn't show it. Of course, that's entirely reasonable. Jamal placed his phone on the table and called Maya, putting her on speaker. "Good evening, Ms. Morgan," Maya's voice came through clearly. "I'm Maya Chen, executive assistant to Mr. Washington." "Hello, Ms. Chen," Elizabeth replied. "Thank you for joining us." With the preliminaries established, Elizabeth folded her hands on the table, her expression becoming more serious. "Mr. Washington, first and foremost, I want to personally apologize for the treatment you received at our Atlanta gate today. It was unacceptable, discriminatory, and completely contrary to the values we strive to uphold at Transcontinental Airways." Jamal maintained his composure, neither rushing to accept the apology nor dismissing it. "Thank you for acknowledging that, Ms. Morgan. I appreciate you taking this situation seriously enough to fly here personally." Elizabeth nodded. "What happened to you today isn't just about one incident or one employee. It reflects systemic issues that persist despite our explicit policies and training. I'm not here just to apologize, though that apology is sincere. I'm here to listen and to discuss how we can create meaningful change from this situation." "I'm interested in exactly that," Jamal responded. "But before we continue, I think we should address the elephant in the room. I just learned that my company has a pending meeting with your innovation team tomorrow about a potential partnership. That adds a layer of complexity to this conversation." Elizabeth's eyebrows rose slightly. "I was just briefed on that connection myself a few hours ago. It does indeed complicate matters." She paused. "I want to assure you that whatever happens with regard to today's incident, it will not negatively impact the potential partnership. Those discussions should proceed based solely on the merits of your technology and its fit for our needs." "I appreciate that clarification," Jamal said. "Now, regarding what happened today, I've experienced versions of this many times before. I'm asked to verify my identity or position more often than my older or white counterparts. I'm questioned about being in business or first class. I'm mistaken for support staff rather than the CEO. What made today different was that it was recorded and shared widely. And that's precisely why we need to address it differently," Elizabeth responded. "Not because it was recorded, but because it represents a pattern that needs to be broken. I'd like to know what you think would constitute an appropriate response from Transcontinental." It was a direct question that put the ball in Jamal's court, a gesture of respect for his perspective that didn't go unnoticed. "I've been thinking about that," Jamal said. "A public apology is necessary but insufficient. What I'd like to see is structural change. Specifically, I'd propose 3 actions. First, comprehensive anti-bias training for all customer-facing staff, with particular focus on avoiding age and racial profiling. Second, a review and revision of your verification protocols for corporate accounts to ensure they're applied consistently to all passengers. And third, the creation of a customer advisory board with diverse representation to provide ongoing feedback on these issues." Elizabeth listened attentively, making notes. "Those are thoughtful suggestions, Mr. Washington. In fact, they align with initiatives we've been considering but haven't fully implemented. If you're open to it, I'd like to take them a step further." She outlined her counter-proposal. Not only would Transcontinental implement all 3 of Jamal's suggestions, but they would also create a paid internship program specifically for young entrepreneurs of color, establish a scholarship fund for minority students interested in aviation and technology, and form a partnership with EdTech innovators to develop specific training modules on unconscious bias for their staff. "We have the opportunity to turn this unfortunate incident into something transformative," Elizabeth concluded. "Not just a corporate apology, but a genuine commitment to change." Maya's voice came through the speaker. "These proposals sound promising, Ms. Morgan. However, we would need more details about the proposed partnership with EdTech innovators. We wouldn't want it to appear that Jamal is being compensated for his silence or that his company is profiting from the incident." "A valid concern," Elizabeth acknowledged. "I suggest we keep the business partnership discussions separate from our response to the incident. Your meeting with our innovation team should proceed as planned, based solely on the merits of your platform. The bias training initiative could be developed later if both parties agree it's a good fit." Jamal considered this approach. "That makes sense. I want any business relationship between our companies to stand on its own, independent of this incident." As they continued discussing specifics, a waiter entered with their main course. Jamal had barely touched the appetizers, too focused on the negotiation at hand. "Perhaps we should take a brief pause," Elizabeth suggested. "You've had a long day and we both need to eat." During the short break in conversation, Jamal reflected on the situation. Elizabeth Morgan wasn't what he had expected. There was no defensiveness, no corporate doublespeak, no attempt to minimize what had happened. Instead, she was approaching the issue with directness and apparent sincerity. "Ms. Morgan," Jamal said as they resumed their discussion, "may I ask what brought you personally into this situation? Most CEOs would have delegated this to their PR team." Elizabeth set down her fork. "2 reasons. First, as a woman in aviation leadership, I've experienced my own version of having my authority questioned and my credentials doubted. Different circumstances, of course, but I understand something of what it means to be underestimated and dismissed. Second, I've been working to change the culture at Transcontinental since I became CEO. This incident revealed that we still have significant work to do, and I believe culture change has to be led from the top." It was the most personal moment of their conversation, an acknowledgement of the human dimension beneath the corporate titles and responsibilities. "I appreciate your candor," Jamal said, "and I think we can work together on this." By the end of the 2-hour dinner meeting, they had outlined a comprehensive plan that addressed both the specific incident and the broader systemic issues it represented. Transcontinental would issue a public apology the following morning, accompanied by specific commitments to policy and training changes. Jamal would release his own statement acknowledging the constructive response while maintaining his right to speak openly about his experience. As they concluded, Elizabeth offered one final thought. "Mr. Washington, what happened today was wrong, and I'm deeply sorry for it. But I've been impressed by your poise, your strategic thinking, and your commitment to creating positive change from this experience. The tech world is lucky to have leaders like you." "Thank you, Ms. Morgan," Jamal replied, standing to shake her hand. "I look forward to seeing these commitments put into action." After Elizabeth departed, Maya remained on the phone. "Jamal, that was masterfully handled," she said. "You didn't get emotional, you didn't back down, and you secured concrete commitments." "It helped that she came to the table in good faith," Jamal acknowledged. "Now we need to prepare for tomorrow, both the Elevation Capital pitch and the meeting with Transcontinental's innovation team. It's going to be a pivotal day for the company." What neither of them could fully anticipate was how the events of the next day would unfold. As public reaction to the incident continued to build, unexpected allies emerged, and Jamal found himself at the center of a national conversation about race, age discrimination, and corporate accountability. The spark ignited at an airport gate was growing into a flame that would illuminate issues far beyond one teenager's experience, a flame that had the potential to either burn bridges or light the way toward meaningful change. The following morning dawned clear and bright in San Francisco. Jamal woke at 5:30 a.m., his body still on Chicago time. He had slept surprisingly well given the events of the previous day, perhaps because he had transformed an adverse situation into a constructive path forward. He began his day with his usual routine: 20 minutes of meditation, a quick workout in the hotel gym, and a review of the latest educational technology news. Routine provided stability, his father had always told him, especially during turbulent times. By 7:00 a.m., he was showered and dressed for his Elevation Capital meeting: charcoal gray slacks, light blue button-down, navy blazer, no tie. Professional but not pretentious, the careful balance he always sought to achieve. As he finished his breakfast, Transcontinental Airways released their official statement, exactly as Elizabeth Morgan had promised. It acknowledged the discriminatory treatment Jamal had received, offered an unequivocal apology, and outlined specific steps the airline would take to address both the incident and the underlying issues it reflected. The statement concluded with a personal note from Elizabeth. "As CEO, I take full responsibility for the culture of our organization. What Mr. Washington experienced reflects a gap between our stated values and our lived practices. His dignity, professionalism, and willingness to engage in productive dialogue have been exemplary. We are committed to learning from this incident and making the structural changes necessary to ensure all our passengers are treated with respect and fairness, regardless of age, race, or any other characteristic." Within minutes, the statement was being dissected on news channels, business programs, and social media. Opinions varied widely. Some praised the airline's direct acknowledgement of discrimination and concrete commitments. Others criticized it as corporate damage control. Many expressed surprise at the speed and seriousness of the response, unusual in an industry often criticized for its defensive posture toward customer complaints. At 7:45 a.m., Jamal released his own brief statement through EdTech Innovators' social media channels. "I appreciate Transcontinental Airways' acknowledgement of yesterday's incident and commitment to substantive change. This experience reflects challenges faced by many young entrepreneurs of color. I look forward to seeing meaningful action resulting from our discussions. My focus remains on expanding educational opportunities for students through technology." Maya arrived at his hotel room at 8:30 a.m., carrying 2 laptop bags and a determined expression. "Ready for the real purpose of this trip?" she asked, setting up their equipment for a final review of the Elevation Capital presentation. "More ready than I expected to be, given everything else that's happened," Jamal replied with a smile. For the next 2 hours, they methodically went through every slide, every data point, every potential question. EdTech Innovators had reached a critical juncture. Their platform was proving successful in initial deployments, showing measurable improvements in student outcomes across diverse educational environments. The $5 million Series A funding they were seeking would allow them to scale nationwide, reaching thousands more schools and potentially millions of students. At 10:45 a.m., They packed up and headed to Elevation Capital's offices in the financial district. As their Uber approached the sleek glass building, Jamal's phone buzzed with a text from Stephen Harrington, the Goldman Sachs executive he'd met on the flight. Saw the airline's statement. Well handled. Still available to meet after your elevation pitch if helpful. Jamal quickly replied. Thanks, we'll let you know how it goes. In the elevator up to Elevation's offices, Maya gave Jamal a final pep talk. Remember, they're investing in you as much as the platform. Your vision, your leadership, your ability to execute. Yesterday's incident and how you handled it only strengthens that case. The elevator doors opened to reveal a modern, minimalist reception area with views of the Bay Bridge. A young woman greeted them warmly. Mr. Washington, Miss Chen, the team is ready for you in the main conference room. As they were led through the office, Jamal noticed heads turning, subtle whispers exchanged. The incident had clearly made him recognizable in ways he hadn't been 24 hours earlier. The conference room contained 5 people. James Chen, Elevation's founding partner, Aisha Johnson, their educational technology specialist, Marco Diaz, technical due diligence lead, Sarah Williams, financial analyst, and David Nguyen, social impact assessment director. The diversity of the investment team was notable, and Intentional Elevation prided itself on bringing varied perspectives to its funding decisions. After introductions, James Chen addressed the elephant in the room. Before we begin, Jamal, I want to acknowledge that you've had an eventful 24 hours. We've all seen the news. If you prefer to reschedule this meeting, we would completely understand. Jamal appreciated the consideration but shook his head. Thank you, but I'd prefer to proceed as planned. What happened yesterday was unfortunate but not unusual in my experience. My focus remains on our mission to democratize quality education through technology. James nodded with visible respect. Then let's get started. We're eager to hear more about how EdTech Innovators is planning to scale. For the next 90 minutes, Jamal led the presentation with confidence and clarity. He outlined their current deployments across 3 states, the measurable improvements in student performance, and their technical architecture designed for secure scalability. Maya provided detailed financial projections and unit economics, demonstrating a path to sustainability that balanced social impact with business viability. The team from Elevation Capital asked thoughtful, probing questions that revealed they had done their homework. How would the platform adapt to different state curriculum requirements? What measures were in place to protect student data privacy? How did they plan to maintain quality while scaling rapidly? What metrics did they use to evaluate effectiveness beyond standardized test scores? Jamal and Maya answered each question with precision and candor, acknowledging areas still under development while emphasizing their proven results. As the presentation concluded, Aisha Johnson asked the final question. Jamal, we're impressed with what you've built and your vision for expansion, but scaling nationally means you'll be interfacing with thousands of school administrators, many of whom might have the same reaction to your age as that gate agent yesterday. How do you plan to navigate that challenge? It was a fair question that went to the heart of a practical business concern, not just a social justice issue. Jamal considered his response carefully. That's something we've been addressing since day one. We've developed a graduated introduction process that begins with virtual presentations and data-driven demonstrations before in-person meetings. This gives administrators time to engage with our platform's results before they engage with me personally. Additionally, we've built a diverse leadership team with experienced educators who often lead initial conversations with more traditional districts. He paused before continuing. But I'll also say this, yesterday's incident has unintentionally created an opportunity. The visibility has already generated inquiries from several major school districts who might not have considered us previously. Our challenge is to ensure they're interested in our platform's capabilities, not just our story. James Chen nodded thoughtfully. Well said. And speaking of your story, the way you handled yesterday's incident speaks volumes about your leadership capacity, which is a significant factor in our investment decisions. We don't just fund technologies, we fund teams and leaders. After a few more questions, the meeting concluded with handshakes all around and a promise from James. We'll be in touch very soon. This has been one of the most impressive presentations we've seen this quarter. Outside the building, Maya could barely contain her excitement. That went better than we could have hoped. Did you see their reaction to the learning progression data and the retention statistics for at-risk students? They were genuinely impressed. Jamal allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. It felt right. They asked the questions we expected and seemed satisfied with our answers. Now we wait, but I'm optimistic. You should be, Maya agreed. Now, are you ready for the transcontinental meeting this afternoon? It's going to have a very different dynamic after everything that's happened. Actually, Jamal said, checking his phone, I might take Stephen Harrington up on his offer to meet first. Having Goldman Sachs in our corner could be valuable, especially if they have educational foundation connections. Can you push the transcontinental meeting back by an hour? Maya nodded. I'll make it happen. And Jamal, I'm proud of how you're handling all of this. Many CEOs 3 times your age wouldn't navigate these waters with such poise. As Maya made the necessary calls, Jamal texted Stephen to arrange their meeting. The day was unfolding with unexpected momentum. The Elevation Capital pitch had gone well. Transcontinental's public response was generating positive attention for their commitments to change, and new doors were opening through connections like Stephen Harrington. What Jamal didn't yet realize was that the most profound impact of the airport incident was still to come, not through corporate statements or business partnerships, but through the thousands of young people of color who were watching how he navigated this moment, drawing inspiration and lessons from his example. The ripple effects were just beginning to spread, reaching places and people far beyond what anyone involved could have anticipated. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and calls. Stephen Harrington introduced Jamal to Goldman Sachs' educational investment team, who expressed interest in EdTech Innovators' unique approach to closing the achievement gap in underserved communities. The meeting with Transcontinental's innovation team proceeded professionally, focused entirely on the potential partnership for in-flight educational content, with no mention of the previous day's incident. By the time Jamal returned to his hotel room at 7:30 p.m., he was exhausted but satisfied with how events had unfolded. He ordered room service, planning a quiet evening to decompress before his flight back to Chicago the following afternoon. His plans changed when Maya called. Jamal, I just got off the phone with CBS this morning. They want you to appear on tomorrow's show to discuss the incident and the response. They'll send a car at 5:00 a.m. if you agree. Jamal hesitated. He was a technology entrepreneur, not an activist or public speaker on racial issues. Yet he recognized that this platform offered an opportunity to shift the conversation beyond his personal experience to the broader issues it represented. I'll do it, he decided. But I want to be clear about the talking points. This isn't just about one incident or one airline. It's about patterns of experience that young entrepreneurs of color face across industries. Absolutely, Maya agreed. I'll work on talking points tonight and send them over. I think this is the right decision, Jamal. Your voice needs to be part of this conversation. After finishing his dinner, Jamal opened his laptop to check emails and was stunned by what he found. Over 300 messages had arrived in the past 24 hours from fellow entrepreneurs, educators, students, parents, and business leaders. Many shared similar experiences of being underestimated or discriminated against because of their age, race, or both. Others offered support, advice, or potential partnerships. One email in particular caught his attention. It was from Dr. Patricia Williams, the cardiologist who had stood by him at the Atlanta airport gate. Dear Jamal, she wrote, I've been following the developments since our encounter yesterday. Your poise under pressure and strategic response to the situation have been exemplary. I mentioned that I'm the head of cardiology at Grady Memorial Hospital. But what I didn't share is that I also sit on the board of a foundation dedicated to supporting young Black entrepreneurs in STEM fields. We would be honored to have you speak at our annual conference next month. These young people need to see someone like you, someone who not only builds innovative technology, but also knows how to navigate the complex social dynamics that too often create barriers to success. Please consider this invitation. The next generation needs your example and your wisdom. Jamal was moved by the request. He had always seen himself primarily as a technology innovator, focusing on creating tools that could help students succeed regardless of their zip code or circumstances. But this incident was revealing another dimension of his role as a visible example of possibility for other young people of color with entrepreneurial ambitions. He replied to Dr. Williams, accepting the invitation and suggesting they discuss how EdTech Innovators might support the foundation's work. As he prepared for bed, his phone lit up with a text from his father. Your mother and I just watched your statement on the news. You made us proud today, son. Not just for standing up for yourself, but for turning this into something constructive. That's real leadership. The message brought unexpected tears to Jamal's eyes. His parents had always been his strongest supporters, believing in his vision when others doubted, sacrificing to ensure he had opportunities to develop his talents. Their approval meant everything. He called home, needing to hear their voices after the intensity of the past 36 hours. They talked for nearly an hour, his parents offering both comfort and perspective. "Remember what Grandma always said," his mother reminded him. "When they go low, you go high, but make sure you're building a ladder that others can climb too." It was this family wisdom that had guided him through challenges before and would continue to shape his response to this unexpected moment in the spotlight. The next morning came early. Jamal was in the CBS studio by 5:30 a.m., makeup applied lightly to account for the harsh studio lights. The producer briefed him on the format, a 7-minute segment with the anchors discussing both the specific incident and the broader issues it represented. "Just be yourself," the producer advised. "You're articulate and thoughtful. That's why we wanted you on the show." When the cameras went live, Jamal spoke with a clarity and perspective that belied his 17 years. He acknowledged Transcontinental Airways' constructive response, while emphasizing that the incident reflected patterns experienced by many people of color in professional settings. "What happened to me at that gate happens in boardrooms, venture capital meetings, and countless other professional spaces," he explained. "The difference is that most incidents aren't recorded or don't generate public attention. My hope is that this conversation extends beyond one airline or one teenager to address the systemic biases that create barriers for talented people from all backgrounds." When asked about his company, Jamal smoothly connected the incident to his mission. "EdTech Innovators exists because I saw how educational opportunities were distributed unequally based on zip codes and circumstances beyond students' control. The same types of bias that led to me being questioned at that gate also lead to assumptions about which students can excel or which communities deserve cutting-edge educational resources. My goal is to challenge those assumptions through technology that adapts to every student's needs and potential." The interview concluded with the anchor asking what advice Jamal would give to other young entrepreneurs facing similar challenges. "Document everything. Know your rights. Build a support network of mentors and allies, and most importantly, use these experiences as fuel rather than allowing them to extinguish your fire. Every barrier you break through creates a path for others to follow." The segment ended to enthusiastic appreciation from the production team. "That was fantastic," the producer told him. "You have a natural ability to communicate complex issues clearly. Have you considered doing more media work?" Jamal smiled. "My focus is on building educational technology, but I recognize that visibility matters. If sharing my experience helps create change or inspires other young entrepreneurs, I'm willing to be part of that conversation." By the time he boarded his flight back to Chicago that afternoon, EdTech Innovators had gained 10,000 new social media followers, received partnership inquiries from 3 major school districts, and been mentioned in dozens of news articles and broadcasts. More significantly, Jamal had received hundreds of messages from young people of color who saw in his experience a reflection of their own challenges, and in his response, a model for turning obstacles into opportunities. As the plane took off from San Francisco International Airport, the same airline, but with notably different treatment from the crew, Jamal reflected on how much had changed in just 48 hours. What had begun as a humiliating experience of discrimination had transformed into a platform for addressing systemic issues and amplifying his company's mission. The true test, however, would come in the weeks and months ahead. Would Transcontinental Airways follow through on their commitments to change? Would Elevation Capital's interest convert to actual investment? Would the public attention translate to meaningful support for EdTech Innovators' mission to democratize quality education? And perhaps most importantly, could Jamal maintain his focus on his core mission while embracing this new dimension of his leadership role as a voice for young entrepreneurs of color? The answers to these questions would unfold in unexpected ways, testing Jamal's resilience, vision, and capacity to transform challenge into opportunity. 3 months later, Jamal stood before a packed auditorium at the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. The occasion was the launch of the Pathways Initiative, a collaborative program between EdTech Innovators, Transcontinental Airways, and the National Urban League, designed to create opportunities for young entrepreneurs of color in technology and aviation. What began as a moment of discrimination has evolved into a movement for change, Jamal told the audience of students, educators, business leaders, and policymakers. Not because one incident matters more than others, but because it created an opportunity to address patterns that affect thousands of talented young people every day. In the front row sat his parents, beaming with pride. Beside them were Elizabeth Morgan, Dr. Patricia Williams, and James Chen from Elevation Capital, which had finalized a $6 million investment in EdTech innovators, $1 million more than originally requested, with the additional funds earmarked specifically for expanding to schools in the most underserved communities. The past 3 months had seen remarkable developments. Transcontinental Airways had implemented comprehensive anti-bias training for all customer-facing staff, revised their verification protocols for corporate accounts, and established a diverse customer advisory board as promised. Elizabeth Morgan had personally overseen these changes, demonstrating a commitment that went beyond public relations to genuine cultural transformation. EdTech innovators had expanded from serving schools in 3 states to implementations in 12 states, with pilots underway in 5 more. Their platform was now helping over 125,000 students nationwide, with data showing particularly strong improvements among previously underperforming students. The newly launched Pathways initiative would provide mentorship, internships, and seed funding for young entrepreneurs of color developing technology solutions in education and transportation. It would also create a pipeline for diverse talent into leadership positions in both industries. This initiative represents the best possible outcome from a challenging moment, Jamal continued. Not just an acknowledgement of what went wrong, but a concrete commitment to creating what can go right when we invest in young people regardless of their background, age, or appearance. He introduced the first cohort of Pathways participants, 20 high school and college students from across the country who had been selected for the program. Each would receive mentorship, internship opportunities, and support for developing their own innovative solutions to educational and transportation challenges in their communities. As Jamal watched these young innovators take the stage, he reflected on the unexpected journey of the past 3 months. What had begun with a discriminatory interaction at an airport gate had catalyzed partnerships, investments, and initiatives that would impact thousands of lives. After the ceremony, Elizabeth Morgan approached him. "Jamal, I want you to know that your response to that incident has changed our company in profound ways. Our internal metrics on customer treatment equity have improved significantly since implementing the changes we discussed. You've helped us become better." Jamal nodded. "That's what real accountability looks like, not just acknowledgement, but action. I appreciate your willingness to do the hard work of cultural change." Later, at a small reception for the Pathways participants, a 16-year-old girl from Detroit approached Jamal shyly. "Mr. Washington, I just wanted to say thank you. When I saw what happened to you and how you handled it, it made me believe that I could be a CEO too, despite what people might think when they look at me." Her words encapsulated why Jamal had decided to embrace the public dimension of his experience rather than simply focusing on his business. His visibility mattered to young people who rarely saw themselves represented in entrepreneurial success stories. That evening, back in his hotel room, Jamal video-called Maya, who had remained in Chicago to manage operations during his Washington trip. "How did it go?" she asked eagerly. "Better than I could have imagined," Jamal replied. "The Pathways initiative launch was covered by all the major networks. We've already received inquiries from 3 other airlines and 2 hotel chains about implementing similar programs. And the new Pathways participants, Maya, they're brilliant. Wait until you see what they're working on." "That's fantastic," Maya said. "And I have news too. Elevation Capital just introduced us to their portfolio company in the adaptive learning space. They want to explore integration possibilities that could expand our reach internationally." Jamal smiled. The momentum was building in exactly the direction they had hoped. "Let's set up that meeting for next week. And Maya, thank you for everything these past few months. I couldn't have navigated any of this without you." After they hung up, Jamal stood at the window of his hotel room, looking out at the illuminated monuments of Washington, D.C. He thought about the journey from that moment at the Atlanta airport to this point. The challenges faced, the opportunities seized, the partnerships formed, and the lives that would be changed as a result. The incident had been painful, but the response had created something powerful and positive. It wasn't just about one teenager being denied boarding or one airline implementing new policies. It was about recognizing patterns of discrimination and working collectively to dismantle them. It was about creating pathways where barriers had stood before. As Jamal prepared for bed, his phone buzzed with a text from his father. "Grandma would have been so proud today, son. You didn't just climb the ladder, you're building a whole new one." Jamal smiled at the reference to his grandmother's wisdom. In many ways, that was the most meaningful measure of success, not the funding secured or the partnerships formed, but the pathways created for others to follow. The next morning, as he boarded his flight back to Chicago in business class without incident, Jamal reflected on how a moment of discrimination had become a movement for change. The journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more barriers to break through, more minds to change. But the path forward was clearer now, illuminated by what had been learned and what had been built in response to adversity. As the plane climbed into the clear blue sky, Jamal opened his laptop to review the latest data from schools using their platform. The numbers told a story of students exceeding expectations, breaking through limitations, and reaching new heights, a reflection of his own journey and a promise of what was possible when talent was recognized regardless of packaging. In that moment, cruising above the clouds, Jamal Washington wasn't just a CEO or an entrepreneur or a symbol of resilience in the face of discrimination. He was a builder of technology, of opportunities, of pathways forward. And in that building lay the most powerful response to every barrier he had faced and would face in the future. The truth that had stunned the airline staff that day wasn't just that he was a teenage CEO. It was that his vision, his resilience, and his commitment to creating change could transform a moment of discrimination into a movement of opportunity that extended far beyond one flight, one company, or one young man's journey. And that was a truth powerful enough to change not just one system, but many. If you've been moved by Jamal's story of resilience and transformation, please consider subscribing to our channel for more inspiring narratives that challenge assumptions and celebrate the triumph of character over circumstance. What moments in your own life have you transformed from obstacles into opportunities? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.